Hello, David. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How
We
was
are
your weekend?
Back. Oh, my weekend was full of great stuff and crazy stuff as well. Anyway, let's get on to our interview
Let's
today
do it.
because otherwise we're running out of time. F Braun MCash.
One of the Highlander veterans.
Yes, one of the Highlander veterans. F Braun came in to take over. Actually, originally it was my dear friend. Well, actually, he took over from. Oh God, I'm totally blanking
Bob
now.
Anderson?
Peter Diamond. Bob Anderson was the first, and then Peter Diamond was the second.
Got
Who
it.
came in for the second portion of season 2 or 3? I think 2 it was. And F Braun came in and finished off the last, I think, 4 seasons,
Got it.
4 seasons. And he did 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yeah. So he came in, and it's a very different style. F Braun's much more a traditional type of style that he has. Very good knowledge. I mean, the amazing knowledge he has with weapons that we used to pick up. I was always astounded by the amount of knowledge he had for that.
It's great.
And I decided to bring him on because he spent a lot of time. A lot of the things he did. My style was different than F's, so it was interesting because when he would create a choreography on something, he would have my side and his side done the way he moves. And when he would teach the other guest star, he would do the moves like he would do them, and then I would do them with the guest star. And the guest star would go, "Wait a minute, you changed that move." And I go, "No, actually I didn't. I'm just moving differently. I move to the side, or I might change this movement a little bit." The block and the angulations are exactly the same. So anyway, but let's listen. Let's talk about F Braun. Let's get to F because I want to get to him so we can hear what we had to say.
Let's get started.
F, hello. How are you?
Adrian, I'm doing very well. Hope you are as well.
Where are you? In Vancouver still?
Yeah, actually, I don't live in Vancouver. I live in Maple Ridge, just outside of Vancouver. But yep, that's where we are.
And are we having a lovely Vancouver weather at the moment? Because
It is a little bit chilly outside, but it is beautifully sunny with a clear sky and a few clouds. It's really great. We've been having.
I like to hear about Vancouver because it makes me feel at home from England because it's very similar weather. It's rainy one minute and it's sunny the next.
I mean, I've lived in England several times for extended periods in all of the seasons, and to be perfectly frank, the winter in England is the most miserable, at least for myself. But the snowy, we've had almost no snow here at all this year. We had maybe about a week and a half of snow this entire winter.
Well, we've actually been there's a little snow in the mountains here. We're about to have a whole bunch of rain in LA and snow up in the mountains this coming week, so we're not adverse to it. You know what I mean?
No, I just like I say, I haven't been to LA that much, but every time I go down there, it's either yellow and brown grass everywhere, or the very odd occasion in the spring where you get sort of like the 2 weeks of the grass is actually green. So.
Well, that's usually the way LA is most of the year until it gets some water, and then it just turns beautifully green everywhere, and then that dies after it stops raining. But anyway, so listen, tell me what we worked together on Highlander for 4 seasons, wasn't it?
4 years, yep, and
4 years.
The fourth movie.
And the fourth movie, yeah. So tell me a little bit about I mean, obviously, sword work has been your life. You are probably the most walking encyclopedia of weapons that I've ever heard. What got you your interest in weapons and stuff like that?
Oh gosh, well, weapons in general. My father was in the Army. He was a professional Army officer and quite substantial rank, as a matter of fact. I was born in a small town, and he was in between postings, but eventually ended up living on an Army base for the first 4 or 5 years of my life. And then another. But I started handling swords when I was about 13. I got interested in fencing, and being in a small town, we didn't really. I mean, we had a YMCA and one private sort of exercise facility, and there was a person there who was doing swords, foil. So I thought, oh, what the heck, and went down and piddled around for a while, and eventually ended up buying a foil of my own. Well, my parents bought a foil for me, and started actually handling swords when I was 13 years old. And then when I was in university, we had the 2-year course of theatrical fencing, in the theater school, but I was also on in the university fencing club, and eventually became a saber fencer competitively, and then started studying historical weapons when I started to be asked to choreograph fight scenes for the actual drama school productions, like Romeo and Juliet, because I was always in them, and then I had to choreograph the fights, and I thought, well, these are different weapons from the Olympic style. They can't be used the same way. Obviously, their design dictates they can't be used the same way. So that, then getting into the Stratford Shakespeare Festival right after graduating and working with the legendary Paddy Creen for the best part of 5 years, got my interest going in not only choreography, but learning about historical weapons. And then I got a couple of awards and grants to study in England and Europe, and that's basically where it started. So by about 1980, I was well on my way to having done all of for quite a few years of basic research into historical weapons, and of course Asian weapons like the katana and so on and so forth that I was studying while I was also doing martial arts all the way through that time period as well. So basically, since I was 13, I've been handling swords since I was 13, and just continuing on since, because as Patty said, you never stop learning. I continue studying all the time. If I go through a week and haven't learned something new about some aspect of bladed weapons fighting, I consider it sort of, well, not a wasted week, but I better get off my butt.
All right, so I'm going to test your thing here. Have you ever heard of the Khanda?
A Khanda?
Yeah. Khanda.
Now, that name sounds very familiar, but right at the moment, I cannot bring a picture into my mind. I mean,
okay,
there's a lot of weapons.
It's an Indian sword.
I'm
just testing because usually when I actually ask you these things, the flamard, that's a weird. Oh, we've used these before, which is the bladed rapiers with the Renaissance style. The flamard, is that undulating weapon.
Well, actually, they're called flamberge. I guess there's several names for everything. There's no such a thing as a single name for one particular style or design. But generally speaking, the wave blades are called flamberge blades. Tell me about this thing then.
No, well, I mean, I just happen to be, because what I always found very interesting as an actor as well, when you're on the set, you have a sword master who can actually tell you where the sword was made, why they used it, and how they used it. Was also very interesting. I was trying to test your knowledge on certain things, so I just happened to look up the Khanda. It's actually an Indian weapon. Which,
it did sound like that in terms of, like, when you spelled it, I thought that probably is East Asian, Indian East Asian, which is interesting because I did a workshop, an extended workshop called the Vancouver International Sword Symposium this February, where I was teaching a couple of weapons there. It was very large, and we had a whole bunch of instructors from India, and they were teaching all of the traditional East Indian weapons, which I know a little bit about them, and I have studied a little bit about them. But again, there's so many different types. Some of them very esoteric, and these guys were fantastic. So I'm now keeping in touch with them. But that was a weapon that didn't come up in their curriculum when I was taking their workshops at the symposium. That's cool. I'm going to have to look up that because it's just.
There are some very interesting weapons, when you're looking at these things. Kilij, which is turkey. It's a very odd shape. I mean, it's straight and then suddenly bends.
Yes, it does, and that's to do back cuts to reach around parries.
Right, but also on because they use it on riding for horsemen.
Yeah, it adds weight to the tip, but it also is. You have to be very careful when you're swinging around because the balance, because of that excess weight and how that bend affects momentum, angular momentum and inertia. I had a friend of mine a couple of years ago who was swinging a Kilij around, and he tried to make it do something the design wasn't intended to do, and he tore a couple of muscles in his wrist. So it's it's a very good example of the fact that a sword can actually hurt you even if you're not using it against another sword if you try to move it improperly. That's why it's so very important to really study the weapon and pick it up and move it slowly and go, when I change direction at this speed or whatever, what does the weapon tell me? How does the weapon speak to me? And that's just so important.